I discover my husband was on a cruise with his lover, but I was already on board with her fiancé, turning betrayal into shocking revenge. I never thought my marriage would end on the deck of a cruise ship. For 15 years, I believed in the life my husband and I had built together, the routines, the anniversaries, the small promises. But the email I saw that Tuesday afternoon changed everything. It wasn't even meant for me. A forwarded confirmation, accidentally synced to our family cloud, revealed his secret, a Caribbean cruise booked under his name and hers. Her name was Vanessa. Champagne package, couples massage, a suite with a balcony overlooking the endless blue. The kind of romantic trip he had never planned with me. I stared at the itinerary, calm but hollow inside, realizing this wasn't a fling. It was a carefully curated parallel life. My first instinct was rage. I wanted to rip his clothes from our shared closet, shred every memory, burn every lie. But before I could act, another notification pinged. A photo, her in new lingerie, smiling into a mirror with a caption, "Counting the days until this cruise." That's when a strange memory resurfaced, a charity gala 3 months earlier, where she had bragged about her engagement. Vanessa wasn't single. She had a fiancé. Suddenly, the betrayal took on an unexpected symmetry. I sat down, opened my laptop, and began to plan. I typed her name into social media, and within seconds I found him. Bradley, her fiancé. A polished tech entrepreneur with the kind of success story posts that made strangers double tap. Handsome, confident, smiling beside her in dozens of photos where she flaunted her diamond ring. Scrolling through his feed, one post stopped me cold. Heading on a solo trip before the wedding madness. Time to clear my head and come back ready to start forever with Vanessa. The dates matched. The same week. The same cruise. My husband wasn't the only one with a secret. For the first time in hours, I felt something other than anger. A sharp clarity, almost excitement. This wasn't just betrayal, it was symmetry, almost poetic. I found Bradley's company email and wrote, "Mr. Bradley, I believe we need to talk about Vanessa and my husband. They've booked a cruise together. Would you meet me for coffee?" I attached the booking confirmation. 3 minutes later, he replied, "Where and when?" The next morning, I sat in a quiet cafe, heart pounding. When he walked in, I recognized him instantly. Taller in person, carrying himself with the confidence of someone used to being in control, except his eyes betrayed the same shattering truth I felt inside. He didn't shake my hand. He didn't waste words. "Show me everything," he said. And so I did. By the time our coffees turned cold, Bradley and I had moved past disbelief and into something sharper, strategy. Two betrayed partners, bound together not by choice, but by circumstance. "They think they're clever," I muttered, sliding the printed itinerary back into my bag. "But they don't know what's waiting for them." Bradley leaned back, jaw tight. "So what exactly are you suggesting?" I took a deep breath. "That we don't just expose them. We take the same cruise. We make them see us everywhere, on the deck, at the captain's dinner, on the same excursions. Let their fantasy crumble while we watch." For the first time, a smile tugged at his mouth. It wasn't warm, it was the kind of smile born from pain and a taste for justice. "I'm in." The week leading up to departure became a performance worthy of an Oscar. I kissed my husband goodbye as he packed his so-called conference clothes, even helped him choose a tie. He told me he'd miss me, eyes sliding away like they always did when he lied. I smiled back, hiding the suitcase I had already packed. When his plane took off, not to Seattle, but to Miami, I drove straight to the port where Bradley was waiting. We rehearsed our cover story, old college friends who decided to reunite. We memorized the ship's layout, their planned activities, even the excursions. Every move was calculated. As we stood in line at the cruise terminal, Bradley touched my shoulder lightly. "How are you feeling?" I swallowed hard, somewhere between wanting to cry and wanting to push them both overboard. He gave a low chuckle. "Don't worry. I already looked up maritime law. Overboard is frowned upon." For the first time in days, I laughed. It sounded foreign, but it felt good. We boarded separately, just like we'd planned. He went through first, carrying himself with easy confidence. I followed 10 minutes later, trying to keep my breathing steady as I crossed the gangway into a floating world that would soon become a battlefield. My cabin was 1245, right next door to theirs. The symmetry made my stomach turn, but also steadied me, like fate itself had designed this confrontation. I unpacked slowly, hanging dresses I hadn't worn in years, garments I had chosen carefully for their elegance. If I was going to watch my husband fall apart, I'd do it while looking untouchable. Through the wall, silence. Their flight hadn't landed yet. That gave me time to meet Bradley. We found each other on the upper deck, leaning against the railing, staring at the ocean. "They'll be here soon," he said without looking at me. I nodded. "How do you think she'll react when she sees you?" His mouth curved into something between bitterness and amusement. "Probably the same way your husband will when he realizes he's not the only one playing games." We stayed there for a long moment, the salt air heavy between us. Beneath the anger, something unexpected was forming, an understanding deeper than words. Later, back in my cabin, I heard it. Laughter through the wall. Their footsteps, her high heels clicking on the floor, his low voice. I pressed my palm flat against the wood, every nerve in my body alive. They had no idea I was inches away. No idea what awaited them. Dinner the first night was a performance. I had reserved a table at the captain's gala, knowing full well they'd be there too. I wore a black dress that hugged my figure just enough to demand attention without trying. When Bradley walked in, he looked as though he belonged in every corner of that ship. Sharp suit, easy smile, steady presence. We took our seats, laughter timed just right, as if we'd known each other forever. And then it happened. My husband and Vanessa entered. She glittered in a sequin gown, his hand placed proudly at the small of her back. For a moment, the sight of them together knocked the air from my lungs. 15 years of marriage, reduced to a man parading someone else as if she were his prize. But then Bradley leaned closer and whispered, "Smile. Make him wonder." I did. I laughed at something Bradley said, tilting my head just enough for my husband to catch sight of me. His face froze mid-smile. His hand slipped from Vanessa's back. She followed his gaze, her eyes landing on me, and then on Bradley. The color drained from her face, so fast I thought she might faint. But she didn't. She straightened her shoulders, plastered on a smile, and clung to my husband's arm as if nothing were wrong. The four of us sat through dinner in a silent war, every glance charged, every toast an act of defiance. I sipped champagne, savoring each bubble like it was revenge itself. When the violinist passed our table, Bradley reached for my hand, as if it were the most natural gesture in the world. And just like that, I saw both of them break, in tiny, delicious cracks across their perfect facades. The days that followed turned into a carefully orchestrated dance. Everywhere they went, we were there too. Not by accident, by design. At the pool, Bradley and I lounged side by side, sunglasses on, cocktails in hand. My husband arrived with Vanessa, and for a split second, he froze when he saw me stretch out my legs, laughing at something Bradley whispered. Vanessa's fingers tightened on his arm, but she forced a laugh louder than mine, like she could drown me out. On the shore excursion in Cozumel, we signed up for the exact same snorkeling trip. While they swam side by side, Bradley swam close enough that Vanessa couldn't avoid seeing him every time she surfaced. At one point, our eyes met above the waterline, hers wide with panic, mine calm, steady, unflinching. By the third day, the tension had turned suffocating. I caught my husband watching me more than once, his gaze sliding over my smile, my laughter, my body language that screamed freedom. He looked unsettled, almost jealous. Bradley played his role flawlessly. His hand brushed mine as we walked the deck at sunset, his arm slipped casually around my waist during photos. We weren't faking chemistry anymore, it was real, born out of shared betrayal and the thrill of control. That night, as the ship glittered under Caribbean stars, Bradley leaned close and said quietly, "You realize we're winning, right?" I didn't answer. I just looked across the dining room, where my husband sat stiff and silent, Vanessa whispering frantically at his side. Winning didn't even begin to cover it. By the fourth night, the cracks were impossible to ignore. My husband looked restless, snapping at waiters, avoiding my eyes until he couldn't anymore. Vanessa tried to overcompensate, laughing too loudly, touching him constantly, as though proving to everyone, and maybe to herself, that they were unshakable. But then Bradley made his move. During the captain's cocktail hour, when the four of us ended up within arm's reach, he turned to me and said, loud enough for them to hear, I can't believe it took us this long to take a trip together." I smiled sweetly. Better late than never. My husband's glass froze halfway to his lips. Vanessa went pale, her perfectly manicured fingers trembling against the stem of her champagne flute. Afterward, as we left the lounge, I felt a tug on my arm. My husband, his voice low, almost desperate. "What the hell are you doing here?" I met his eyes without flinching. "Enjoying the same vacation you are." His jaw clenched. For once, he had no script, no lie ready to cover the truth. He glanced toward Bradley, who was waiting a few steps away, his posture calm but protective. My husband's face twisted, torn between rage and fear. When he stormed off, Vanessa chased after him, her heels clicking on the polished floor. For the first time, she didn't look like the flawless other woman. She looked like prey. Bradley slid his hand into mine as we walked back toward the deck. "We don't even need to say a word," he murmured. "They're unraveling all by themselves." And he was right. The game was tilting, and it was only a matter of time before it collapsed entirely. The next morning, I found a folded note slipped under my cabin door. The handwriting was unmistakable, my husband's. "We need to talk. Alone. Tonight." I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the words, my pulse steady, but my mind racing. Talk. After years of lies, now he wanted to talk? I slipped the note into my bag, without replying. If he wanted desperation, he wouldn't get it from me. That evening, Bradley and I joined the sunset deck party, a swirl of music, lanterns, and couples dancing under the fading sky. I wore a red dress that drew glances, but the only ones I cared about were across the deck, Vanessa's sharp, furious eyes, and my husband's restless stare that followed me wherever I moved. When Bradley pulled me into a slow dance, his hand steady on my back, I let myself relax against him for the first time. It wasn't just strategy anymore. I felt safe there, in a way I hadn't in years. Across the deck, Vanessa finally snapped. She stormed over, her voice sharp enough to cut through the music. "What are you doing?" she hissed at Bradley, her eyes blazing. He smiled coolly. "Dancing with a friend." She looked at me then, pure venom in her glare. "This is pathetic. Both of you." I leaned closer, my voice calm but cutting. "No, Vanessa. What's pathetic is planning a honeymoon before your wedding." Her mouth fell open. For once, she had no comeback. She turned on her heel and fled, dragging my husband with her. The crowd around us pretended not to watch, but the whispers had already begun. Their perfect illusion was cracking in public now, and there was no turning back. By the fifth day, the ship felt smaller, like all paths inevitably collided. My husband avoided me now, but I could feel his gaze whenever I walked past. Vanessa, on the other hand, had shifted tactics. She was no longer icy and untouchable. She was frantic, clinging to him, whispering furiously in corners, her smile cracking every time she caught sight of Bradley and me. At breakfast, I saw them sitting 2 tables away. He barely touched his food, his shoulders tense. She was scrolling through her phone, pretending to be unbothered, but her hand shook as she lifted her coffee. Bradley leaned closer. "She's breaking faster than I thought." I glanced at him. And him. Bradley's eyes followed my husband for a moment. He looks like a man who's realizing he's lost control. That's when they're the most dangerous. Later that afternoon, fate, or maybe irony, delivered the final twist. A staff announcement invited all special couples to a private champagne toast in the lounge. My stomach twisted as I saw the guest list on the invitation board. Cabin 1243, their cabin, was included. So was 1245, mine. We walked into the lounge together, Bradley's hand resting lightly at my back. My husband's eyes widened the second he saw us. Vanessa gasped audibly, her glass nearly slipping from her hand. The room seemed to shrink as the steward raised a toast, to love, to loyalty, and to unforgettable journeys. The irony was thick enough to choke on. My husband looked at me across the rim of his glass, his face pale, his eyes desperate. In that moment, I realized he wasn't the one holding power anymore. I was. The final night of the cruise arrived like the calm before a storm. The ship glittered with music and lights, but under it all was a tension so sharp it hummed in the air. Bradley and I chose the main dining hall, of course, so did they. When our eyes met across the room, there was no avoiding it anymore. My husband pushed back his chair and walked over, jaw tight, hands balled into fists at his sides. Vanessa trailed behind him, her mask of confidence long gone. "We need to talk," he hissed, leaning down toward me. I set my fork down deliberately. "About what? Your conference? Or your lover's honeymoon before her wedding?" My voice carried just enough for the surrounding tables to fall silent. Vanessa's face drained of color. Bradley stood, calm but immovable at my side, his presence a shield. "You don't understand," my husband began, but I cut him off. "No, you don't understand. For years, I gave you trust, loyalty, love, and you traded it for lies. The only thing I understand now is freedom." A ripple of whispers moved through the dining hall. Vanessa tugged at his sleeve, eyes darting nervously, but he was frozen in place, staring at me like he didn't recognize the woman standing before him. I rose, slid my hand into Bradley's, and together we walked out, past the tables, past the stairs, past the wreckage of two people who thought they could outsmart fate. On the deck, the sea stretched endless and dark, but for the first time in years, I felt light. Bradley looked at me, a small, knowing smile on his lips. "They thought they were taking a dream cruise," I said softly. "Turns out it was ours." And as the ship cut through the waves, I knew I wasn't leaving with heartbreak. I was leaving with clarity and maybe, just maybe, the beginning of something new.